On today's show, the voice of the Dallas Mavericks, Mark Followill, joins me. We got to do a Dallas Mavericks halfway, a little bit more than halfway, through the season breakdown. What have we seen from the Mavericks so far? What is real? What is fake? Mark Followill is going to tell me all that on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can see us right now. And you can see my guests. Incredible, like, shelves full of Emmys, just like Emmy on Emmy on Emmy on Emmy. And they are well-deserved because I'm joined by Mark Followill, the voice of the Dallas Mavericks. Mark, what you got for me?
Nick, it's all about the background, you know. So you got to have the Emmys in the background, right?
I know.
It's all about the background around the pandemic Zoom world.
You got Emmys, I have lightsabers. We're the same, right?
Hey, lightsabers can do a whole lot more damage when you have to, like, put them into action. That's for sure.
Absolutely. All right, we're doing this. We're doing a 41 and a little bit game check-in with the Dallas Mavericks. This season has been so strange. I mean, even stranger than last season when the Mavericks lost a ton of games to COVID. They did the exact same thing again. I did not expect this team to have to deal with that again this year when the pandemic started. But here we are. Jason Kidd, new coach for the Mavericks team, a little bit the same, a little bit different. Overall, has this season gone as expected? What has been a surprising thing this year that you did not expect?
Well, obviously, the Omicron surge has created a situation that I don't think anybody could have envisioned in terms of the Mavericks. And, you know, basically every team has had to deal with losing a lot of players and then have to work players in on the fly that you never would have expected to be on an NBA roster, let alone be getting meaningful minutes in NBA games. So first and foremost, I mean, that's a surprise. I mean, the fact that every team has had to go through this unexpected resurgence of the pandemic, that the NBA has found a way to sort of navigate their way through it. Yes, it is costing teams a lot of players for a lot of games and probably has cost some teams some wins. But it's also, I think, been, you know, it's resulted in some really unique and incredible stories unfolding in front of our very eyes. So, you know, that's the surprise to me, first and foremost.
Yeah, so you're saying Isaiah Thomas normally wouldn't be on the Mavericks if in a normal season.
Yeah, and Brandon Knight was great, and you know, I hope that story you know, has a happy ending to it, and hopefully with the Mavericks for that matter, with Brandon Knight. And you never know if they're going to be able to circle back and get him as part of the mix. And you know, I think everybody loves Isaiah Thomas, and it's a shame that things didn't, in terms of his career rebirth, didn't get to really have a chance to take hold here with the Mavs, because I was very, very excited about him coming here, not just for what he might be able to do for the Mavs, but that's a story I want to see, you know, result in a comeback into the league and him be a productive member of a good team again.
Right. There's a phrase you use a lot. You know, guy had a cup of coffee with the Dallas Mavericks, and we're going to say that a lot this year, right? Like, you look, Isaiah Thomas, Charlie Brown, Carlik Jones, Brandon Knight, Gino Marui, maybe. Like, if these guys don't play again with the Mavericks, we'll look back and be like, oh, yeah, they played for the Mavericks in this weird year where they had 30 players or however many they'll finish the year with. What kind of challenges has that brought for you, like, as a broadcaster? New guys, the lineup is different every night, and then we can talk about the actual Mavericks, but it changed. Like, the team has been different every single day. It feels like Luka's playing, and then when Luka's back, KP is out, and we have new players. Like, some of the 10-day guys are starting. It's been so strange and so inconsistent. How has that been as a broadcaster? And then we can talk about the Mavericks actually playing.
You know what?
That different.
Nick, it hasn't been bad at all, because I enjoy the research and the storytelling part of it. I mean, I really like that. You know, it's fun. And obviously, you want your best players out there, but when a situation like this comes up and you get a chance to learn the backstory of a Charlie Brown and who he is and where he went to school, and Carlik Jones, who we kind of learned a little bit about because he was with the team in the preseason, and the long path for Brandon Knight to get back into the league, and, you know, to go back and refresh when Isaiah Thomas was here and didn't get to use a lot of this information. But I mean, his 2-year run there in Boston in 2015-16 and 2016-17 was, he led the league in fourth quarter points one year and put up incredible numbers. So, to me, that challenge, if you will, is fun because I like, again, the research and the storytelling part of the job. So I enjoyed getting a chance to learn about some individuals that I didn't know a whole lot about, or refresh my memory about people who have been off the radar for a while. So I didn't find that part of it challenging at all, other than it was just, time consuming to do the work, but it was rewarding in terms of the time consumption that I put into it.
As when it comes to knowing what this team is, I see a lot of like national media people. I think I saw like Steve Jones or somebody tweet this the other day, like, all right, this weekend or this week, I'm diving into the Mavericks. I'm going to figure out the Mavericks. I'm going to figure out who they are. Like, is this team, this team that we're seeing right now who's on this good winning streak, or are they just like a 500 team? It's so hard to know what this team is at this point. Are you waiting for a certain point in the season, or have we seen what the Mavericks are at any point this year?
That's a great question. And how things go in a TV broadcast. I think you've watched enough of what we do and kind of have an understanding of it. And as you know, we prepare things to talk about. And then sometimes the game unfolds in a way that it doesn't really fit to you have this thing prepared.
The narrative. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And it just doesn't fit.
We deal with that for sure.
Yeah. So the game on Friday night was the beginning mathematically of the second half of the season. It was the 42nd game on Friday night. Well, the way the game went with the Mavs in Memphis, talking about big picture stuff just didn't really fit because, a very unexpected beatdown of the hottest team in the league by the Mavericks over the Memphis Grizzlies unfolded, and that became the story, and focusing solely on that really became the story. So we had this plan going into it of talking a little big picture about the second half of the season. And what we discussed in our pre-production Zoom call is sort of the answer that I would give you. And that is, okay, well, I think the story to tell at this point with the Mavs, midway through the season, 22-19, their record through 41 games, was just that they had been through so much and so many different things that happened. It's like, I don't know that there's a whole lot to say about the team big picture wise, other than all of this bad stuff has happened to them, from injuries and adjustments to a new coach and some ups and some downs. And yet you look at the standings, and they're very competitive for, at worst right now, 5 or 6 in the Western Conference. Obviously they could slide back into play-in territory, but they sit here in the conversation for 5 or 6 in the West, and they have a chance to do things. And one of them they did, by the way, on Friday night, and they'll have another opportunity here later this week, a week from today, as we record this on Sunday. They'll have another opportunity against Memphis. That's a path to get them at least back into realistically the race for a top 4 seed in the Western Conference. So the story for me, 41 games into the season, isn't necessarily I can give you this like grandiose perspective and position statement on who and what they are, other than they've just sort of survived and have put themselves in a position where they still can make something really good happen in the second half of the season. That's kind of where I am on the Mavs right now.
I think that's where you have to be, right? Because like Brunson, KP, and Luka, that was the 14th game that they've played together last night against the Orlando Magic. It's just so strange. How can you know what this team is, especially under Jason Kidd, when their 3 best players haven't played even 15 games together? It just seems so strange that this is where we are at this point in the season. Coming up, we'll continue our conversation with Mark Followill, the Mavs play-by-play broadcaster, about Jason Kidd, about what the difference has been between Rick Carlisle, who Mark saw for many years in Dallas, and what Jason Kidd has brought to this team. We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Shopify. Cha-ching! It's a sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big businesses, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere. They can synchronize online and in-person sales and effortlessly stay informed. You can do all of this on Shopify. Go check it out. Right now, they're giving users a 14-day free trial to get access to Shopify's entire suite of features, but you have to go to our special URL, shopify.com/LockedOnNBA. The Locked On NBA is all lowercase. It's very important. Shopify.com/LockedOnNBA. Go check it out. If you have a small business, you are doing yourself a disservice to not check out Shopify's all their features that they can do to help you reach customers online and everywhere. So go to shopify.com right now /LockedOnNBA. Shopify.com/LockedOnNBA right now. Go to Shopify.com/LockedOnNBA. They've been pretty resilient. Nico Harrison used that word yesterday when talking about this Mavericks team. They've been so resilient. And he also said that it was kind of a good thing that some of these guys had been out, because it allowed other guys to get more playing time, gain more confidence. A guy like Josh Green, a guy like Sterling Brown getting some extra time, even just Brunson getting the extra run, and to prove, I think, to Jason Kidd that he should be, a starter and step in there. Have you seen that that's been a benefit to some of these guys to get some extra run, to get some extra playing time? And where do you think the Mavs have benefited most?
Well, I think the two names that you just mentioned are probably the two I would point to. Jalen, because he's had the opportunity to start, and he played so well when he was a starter that the Mavericks arrived in what I think is a really good place for their starting lineup. And that is, Jalen has played so well, you can't take him out of the starting lineup.
Right.
That he needs to be with Luka in the backcourt, that you need to start the game, you need to finish the game with two playmakers on the floor, and then you can manage those middle minutes late in the first quarter and early in the second quarter and stagger Jalen and Luka's minutes, so one of them is always out there, so you have a high-level playmaker on the floor at all times, or two good playmakers on the floor at the beginning of the game, the end of the half, the beginning of the third quarter, and the end of the fourth quarter if it's a close game. That, to me, is number one in terms of a benefit. And the secondary benefit is that it has forced Josh Green into the lineup, and Josh has played well. I've loved what I've seen out of him, because we hadn't seen anything to really give us any sort of confidence or make any even sort of judgment, because he just didn't play. And when he did play, obviously last year was rough, but it was a rookie season, so we certainly understand that. And then there was nothing that we even saw out of him to reach any sort of conclusion, good or bad, other than he's just not out there on the floor helping the team. And so once he got out on the floor, and we saw, and I saw a little bit of this last year, but I think you've certainly seen it this year. Number one, he has very good basketball instincts in terms of movement off the ball. I've said this in some other, I'm including my own podcast and some other interviews, Nick. I have a very popular term that we use right now, if you watch football very much, is playing complementary football. And I think Josh Green is a really good complementary basketball player, because he plays well off of other good players. He moves well off the ball. He has a high passing IQ. That 10 assist game in Portland sort of jumps to mind, but he always seems to make really good decisions in terms of moving the basketball itself, in addition to how he moves off the ball. And then now there's a comfort level in his shot. We've seen him do things. I think I even said one time at a broadcast this year, it's like, man, I can't believe Josh Green just like shot a pull-up jump, put the ball down and shot a pull-up jumper on the baseline. And he's shooting some threes. Last year, he made only 4 threes for the entire 39 games he played for the whole year. And I think he hit his 6th three of the year last night, and shooting an acceptable percentage. It's not a high volume yet, 3-point shots, but the ones that he has taken, at least the percentage is acceptable in the neighborhood of the league average at this point, or very, very close to it anyway. So those two players, to me, I think probably more than anybody that jumps readily to mind, have benefited from, how this is all played out with COVID protocols and injuries, and getting, more of an opportunity to play, as we kind of circle our way back to Nico's comments last night.
Yeah, Josh Green has been a welcome surprise for sure. I think both those guys, Brunson and Jalen, have been such a big welcome surprise, because Josh Green, a lot of fans, and even including us, some of us in the media, kind of wrote him off. Like, hey, if this team is not playing him and they've seen him in practice, they know what he looks like, then why are they not giving him any run at all, right? And then you go back to, okay, well, maybe it was just Rick just hated rookies, and you just try to start thinking through all the different reasons it could be. But now we're finally seeing the benefits of, all right, giving him some confidence. And I wonder if some of that is the confidence that Jason Kidd can bring to a team. We've heard a couple of players this year. I think Tim Hardaway Jr., Reggie Bullock have mentioned Jason Kidd is a player's coach, and he comes in and gives the Mavericks confidence, and gives players confidence, gives shooters confidence. I wish the shooters would hit the threes that they're so confident in taking. But Jason Kidd, I think, has brought just a different vibe, a different mentality to this team. Where have you seen Jason Kidd bring something different than Rick Carlisle? And I still don't know if it's better or worse at this point in the year. But where do you see it being different when you see this team, when you watch this team?
Well, I think that there's clearly a communication, a two-way street of communication that Jason has talked about and preached that is different than what it was. Not to say, look, I watched a lot of shoot-arounds and practices with Rick over the years, and I saw Rick seek input from his team. So, I don't want people to think that he wasn't the kind of coach who would seek input from his team on ideas for how should we approach this or how should we approach that. but there's just a level of communication.
Rick wouldn't have a leadership council, would he?
That's a great question. I don't know if that would be something that would be necessarily up his alley, but I think that the communication thing for Jason is what I've seen. That's been a real breath of fresh air, and I think something that everyone really has gravitated towards and really admired about Jason is that there is an open two-way street of communication, and then when you do that, then you're able to be a little bit tougher and the message can take hold, because obviously, look, there's been some rough patches this year. And I said at the beginning of the year, look, all of this nice stuff. And even Jason kind of laughingly referred to it as, well, we're dating right now. We haven't had our first fight yet. We're a couple that hasn't had our first fight yet. But, there's always going to be tough times. And the Mavs went through some tough times. They went through some pretty low points there with some of the losses that they suffered early on in December. And Jason said, look, these times are testing us. And it looks to me like they've been able to weather the storm, and they're responding well to the test. Now, it took getting knocked down a few times. Bad losses to New Orleans and Memphis early in December. A gut-wrenching loss to the Lakers at home. A gut-wrenching loss on the road to Sacramento. But they have been resilient and bouncing back from those, and now put together a stretch of good play, and they're back to equaling their high water mark of the season of 5 games over 500. It seems like forever ago that they were 9-4 through the first 13 games to start the year. Then Luka got hurt and things kind of went downhill, and they ended up getting as far as 2 games below 500. But now they bounced back to 5 games over, and we'll see if they're going to continue moving from there. And I love to look, not to say that Rick didn't try to get them to play defense, but clearly what this team's identity was: high level offensive efficiency, space the floor, shoot a ton of threes. And Jason's mentality of, if we're going to win a championship, we must play defense. We must find a way to be consistent defensively and have that be our calling card rather than offensive efficiency. And offense will come if you play good defense, and if you have good shooters on your team, certainly they'll start hitting shots at a higher rate than you would expect. So Jason's mentality of, even though the stats don't necessarily show this, but the ball needs to touch the paint and good things will happen. We need to be more focused on that on offense, but our first and most important focus has to be what we do on the defensive end of the floor. And, we're finally sort of seeing that statistically show up now for about a 1-month period since early December.
Well, right now for the entire season, according to Cleaning the Glass, Mavs are the 5th best defensive team right now. And it's pretty wild to see this team such a big turnaround in that area. Now, they're also 15th in offense, which is pretty good, but not the best offensive rating in NBA history that we've been used to seeing. You mentioned Carlisle had this mentality of, all right, with Luka and with KP, I can create the best offense the NBA has ever seen efficiency-wise, but defense be damned a little bit, right? The defense sort of goes to the wayside. And I think that comes with personnel a little bit. It comes with, some of the schemes. But do you think it's with this defense for the Mavericks, how it's so drastically different, going from 20th, 22nd last year to now 5th? Do you think it's scheme? Do you think it's the little players? Because the Mavericks did add Reggie Bullock, Sterling Brown, and KP coming back from that injury and being fully 100% back. Which do you credit that more? Or do you think it's the blame pie is 50-50 on that?
Again, good question, as they all have been. I think there's a lot of things that I would look at. Number one, from a scheme standpoint, I don't want to sit here and try to act like I've got some sort of brilliant perspective on what they've done from a scheme standpoint. Obviously things have changed, and I think there probably took, and the players themselves have said this, and the coaches have sort of said this as well. Yes, it took a while for them to get comfortable with new concepts, new ideas, new terminology, all that sort of thing. So that's one part of the equation. Another aspect of the equation that I brought up on the radio show that we do on the ticket with the guys with Justin Montemayor and Brian Damaris, we talked about this a little bit last night after the game when we were kind of delving into, well, what's different? Because there are some new players, and those guys have helped. Bullock, as you said, Brown, Josh Green getting more minutes than he did last year. That's another change from last year when you want to kind of analyze what's going on defensively. But early in the year, how many times did we hear J Kidd say after games? I mean, Nick, you're on Zoom. You hear this. We cannot continue to let our inconsistency of making shots affect our consistency and our effort and our focus on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, Jason was saying that a lot this year in the early part of the season. He nor Sean Sweeney have said that very much lately. And yes, they're making more shots. Shot making is better than it was early in the season, but it's still across the board consistently hasn't jumped to this uber high efficient level yet. They're better, but it's not like they're one of the very, very best in the NBA. Their offensive efficiency, I guess, is top 10 in their recent run. But still, there's nights when shots aren't falling at the degree of regularity that we would have expected to see in the past. But yet it seems like that their defense is sort of able to plow through whatever disappointment they have about not making shots and play well on that end of the floor. So, I think that kind of is energy, effort, focus part of it, because those are some terms that Sean Sweeney has used lately when he was front and center in terms of media availability and doing the talking pre and post game whenever Jason was in health and safety protocols. So I think that's part of it. KP being healthy is part of it, healthier than he was last year, and being a little bit more mobile on defense. And he's more of a paint protection presence and shot blocking presence when he's played this year. I think that's probably an aspect of it. So it's a lot of things. The league is a little bit different this year too. The league has slowed down. 3-point shooting is down. The Mavericks are playing at a slow pace, and that seems like it's kind of fit in the way things have materialized in the league this year, with a slower pace and lower scoring and lower shooting percentages. And the way the Mavs have played this year is just, a style that theoretically is more conducive to success in the playoffs, because the game slows down. Shooting percentages, typically tend to go down because defense gets a little bit more dialed in and rugged, and is focused on taking away the things that you do well, because you see each other, 6 or 7 times over the course of 2 weeks. So, long answer to your question, but I don't think it's a very easily answered question, because there are so many different tangential directions you can go and why it's better, because I don't think there's any just like one specific answer to it. I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
Yeah, this is what team basketball is sometimes. There's a lot of answers, and sometimes there's a lot of problems, and those problems can have multiple answers sometimes.
Yeah, you're right.
Coming up, we'll continue our conversation with Mark Followill about Luka Doncic. What has been different with Luka? What is different from this season than past seasons? What is working for Luka? What is not working for Luka? And we'll talk to him about his firsthand experience calling the game for Dirk's jersey retirement night, and that entire night where he had tons of interviews and all that. We'll get his perspective on it. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're absolutely delicious. I have to re-up my box right now. Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off the coconut brownie chunk. If I go to the website right now, and I'm on there, coconut brownie chunk is the number one thing on their site. They did a bracket back last March or like around then, and everybody voted that have tried Built bars. A lot of our hosts voted, and we've tried pretty much all these bars. And coconut brownie chunk was the number one bar that people voted, like the number one. I made it all the way to the end. It was the number one bar, and so they had to keep restocking those, keep remaking them. They listen to their customers, and Built Bar knows exactly what their customers want. They want delicious protein bars that taste exactly like candy bars. So go to the website, built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, get yourself a box, coconut brownie chunk. You will not be disappointed in that bar. Absolutely delicious. If you have any other questions on flavors, send me a message. Let me and Isaac know, and we will answer your questions about Built bars. Again, LOCKED15 is the promo code, built.com. Also, I want to tell you about betonline.ag. It's the fastest and easiest way to put down some money on sports, to go ahead and get some of that action. Get in some of that action. I'm actually recording this after the Cowboys game, so I won't make any kind of Cowboys comments about that. But you have a couple more games coming up. This Monday night game, Cardinals-Rams. The Rams are a 3.5-point favorite at home. That one is really interesting. And then you have the Saturday game that we already know, 49ers versus Packers. The Packers start that one out as a 5-point favorite. So if you're into the NFL, great stuff. If you're just into basketball, I don't understand that. Go ahead and check out betonline.ag. Use the promo code LOCKEDON. They'll give you a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. So put in $100, they'll give you $50 to use on their site. So go check it out, BetOnline, where the game starts. You mentioned the slow pace. I found it funny the other day when Jalen Brunson said about the Knicks game. I think we played down to their pace, and the Mavs were 29th in pace, and the Knicks were 30th in pace in the NBA. This team does play very slow, but the three point shooting and hanging your heads is definitely a big thing. You mentioned that Jason Kidd said that a lot in the press comments. You're not understating that. Jason Kidd maybe said that maybe 6 or 7 times after games early in the year, especially when the Mavs, would come back. The first week or so, the Mavs were shooting 20-something% from three. But if you look at some of these last wins, Memphis game, 26% from three. Warriors win, 27% from three. Like the Mavericks aren't just shooting the lights out and beating some of these really good teams in the NBA. They're finally accepting some of these concepts. They're not hanging their head when they don't shoot well. And maybe that has been the big thing that Jason Kidd has brought, just the don't give up mentality, the don't give up on the play, don't give up on the game when your 3-point shot isn't going down. And that's been one of the biggest things the Mavericks have changed. I want to talk about Luka because I think that affects him a lot, and especially the 3-point shooting, not hitting his threes. He's still not hitting his threes. Him and KP have both uttered the phrase, "This year my threes are terrible," which I find funny that they both have said that exact phrase.
Before we go any farther with that, can I just I want to revisit what you said just a second ago, because I thought it was a really good point, and it ties into what gives me hope for the rest of the year. Why Harp and I said last night in the telecast, the best is yet to come, because the way they've won games against good teams here recently is something that cannot be overlooked and understated.
Right.
Golden State scored 82 points against the Mavs, which was a season low, and I assume still is. I don't think they've scored less than 82 in any of their recent games that have occurred after that. Memphis scoring 85 points the other night was a season low for Memphis. Chicago was averaging 120 points per game, Nick, in their 9-game winning streak, and the Mavs held them to 99. And in those games, Steph, Steph missed some shots that he makes, of course, typically. He went 5 for 24. That wasn't all Mavs defense, but some of it was. Zach LaVine went 7 for 21. Nick Vucevic went 6 for 17. Some of those things are getting a little bit lucky. We all know that. We all understand that. But some of those things are Mavs defense too. I mean, if you're watching the games, you see it's like some of it just is, are you going to get down in a stance and are you going to not let your guy beat you?
Right.
And I think that we can look at situations and see that happening a lot more frequently against good players too than we did early in the season. And Sean Sweeney brought this up. And I refer to him a lot, not just because he was the recent acting head coach, but he's sort of the assistant head coach that has, the most skin in the game when it comes to defense. He's the, if you're going to apply another football term to it, he's the defensive coordinator. He's not the only guy out there covering defense. Greg St. Jean is involved in it, and Jared Dudley and Igor Kokoshkov have their roles in that as well. But Sean is, the guy.
He's the Dan Quinn.
Yeah, he's the guy when it comes first and foremost to defense. And, he brought up a great point the other night. 80% of what we do each game are our defensive principles that are going to be unwavering from game to game to game. 20% of it is an adjustment to what that particular opponent's strengths and weaknesses are. So I thought that was a unique perspective as well. So, I know you had a different direction you wanted to go, but before we completely got away from defense, I just wanted to add that what they've done against good teams recently is something that I think should be pretty eye-opening in terms of hope that you can carry that into the remainder of the season.
Yeah, and those wins against the Grizzlies and the Warriors were not by 1 point, 2 points. These were double-digit wins both of these. So it's not just that, okay, Steph missed some shots and John Morant, didn't really play some defense. There was a lot of factors in those games too.
For sure.
I did want to talk about Luka because this has been, we talk about the Mavericks' success and how the Mavericks have been, playing well recently and all that kind of stuff. But this has been a really weird year for Luka. As somebody that interacts with this fan base, as almost my job, I've never seen criticism for Luka the way that I've seen this year. And there are even fringe, and I'm not even sure they're Mavs fans. They could just be Luka fans that are tired of the Mavericks. But I've even seen people say we should trade Luka, which is would seem insane in the past and still is insane now. The Mavs should not be doing that, right?
It's absurd, yes.
Yeah, right. It's ridiculous now.
Get close to the microphone to say it. It's absurd.
It's ridiculous now, but I hadn't ever seen that in the past. And it's interesting to see how he came into this year and to look at, we just had this whole reflective of Dirk's career recently. And I think there's some parallels in there where Dirk didn't necessarily take his body seriously until a little later in his career, where then he became this insane, person that completely took care of everything in a meticulous way. He didn't start his NBA career doing that, right?
Yeah. Health and fitness guru Dirk Nowitzki. Who knew?
Yeah, he is now, but I saw the pics of him and Nash out having fun and all
at the Loon,
all that kind of stuff. What have you seen from Luka this year? What do you think is working for him, is not working for him? Because it has been such a weird start to the year, and there have been people. I mean, the ESPN guys the other night had a ridiculous statement. They're like, "All right, all three of us, Stephen A, Wilbon, and Jalen Rose, said they would start a franchise with Ja Morant instead of Luka Doncic." Like, these are the types of conversations that are happening that I think are also ridiculous. But what do you think is not working for Luka this year? Is it just conditioning? Is it just the way he came into the season, or is there the scheme is not necessarily working for him this year as well?
Well, look, I mean,
24, 8, and 8, right? Like, he's still averaging, and he's still putting up numbers. But
yeah. I mean, closer to 25 points, right, and closer to almost 9 rebounds and 9 assists a game. I'll look at my notes. Yeah, he was going into last night 8.5 rebounds and 8.9 assists going into last night. So really, he's about 25, almost 25, 9 and 9 is what we're talking about. We
can round up on this show.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, let's follow our elementary school mathematics principles and round up when the right side of the decimal point is higher than 0.5.
That's the first time I've been owned at math on this show. I think where someone came in, it was just like, no.
I love numbers, man. You know that. So I think, look. Again, a question that has, is a very insightful question with a lot of different directions we can go with it. Early in the season and at the beginning of the year, I've seen pictures where people have done comparisons to Media Day last season, going into Media Day this year. To me, Luka looked fine from a physical body conditioning standpoint. He got hurt the game on November the 15th, which is kind of coincided whenever the Mavs went from 9-4 and then their record started dipping. I think it was probably a little bit harder for him to be in the kind of condition that he wanted to be. I do think Luka wants some size on his frame because I think he likes being able to operate against smaller players and post them up and back them down and then scream at them that they're too effing small afterwards, because that does happen on more than one occasion. Yeah. Terrence, man, just line up other guys on the list too.
Wagner last night.
I love that we see that side of Luka, by the way. That's fun, man. I enjoy that. So, I think he wants a little bit of size on his frame to be able to do that. When I look at what is or isn't working for Luka this year, I mean, the first thing I point to is it's abundantly clear that he played when he did come back from that initial injury with the Austin Rivers rolling up on the back of his leg in the Denver game on November 15th. When he came back from that, I mean, every game was going down and getting up slowly at some point in the game and flexing that leg and grimacing. And, it was a problem. And I'm still not sure, how close he is to 100% at this point. So that's the number one thing I see, is that somebody suffered an injury less than a month into the season and hasn't been fully right ever since then, and still can play at a very, very high level, even though he isn't, at the maximum, health situation that you would hope for.
Right.
But look, to me, isn't this what Jason Kidd said needed to happen at the beginning of the year? And that is, if the team is going to be dependent on Luka putting up these otherworldly numbers and superhuman games night in, night out to the regular season, then how can we ever hope for him to be in a position to be at his best in the playoffs, when teams then are really going to try to take things away from him and really dial in on him? And it's just going to be, look at how much he did in the Clippers series last year and how exhausted he was looking towards, and how worn down he looked at towards the end of the series. And think about, if they had won that, man, if you're thinking about winning a championship, you got to do that 3 more times. It's not just one arduous series that you've got to go through. It's 4 of them to be able to win a title. So to me, the fact that his numbers are a little bit down, the 3-point shooting is a concern. The fact that it's, plummeted down into, the low 30s, and there's been, 0 for 6s and things like that. Now, the great thing about the Memphis game when he went 0 for 6 from 3 is he went 12 for 16 or whatever it was on 2s and had a season high this year in points in the paint. So Luka's a smart enough player that he's been able to adjust this year and still rely on his ability to beat people off the dribble and score inside and post up players and score against smaller players and those sorts of things to still be able to put up numbers. But I don't look at anything as, other than the 3-point percentage, as anything alarming, and just that he's not 100% healthy. You would want to see that and not have to play a whole year like that. This is in a lot of ways, I mean, what this team needs to be at its best is that Luka doesn't have to be a 29 or 30 point per game guy, or 28, 29 point per game guy, that he can be a 24, 25 point per game guy, and involving other people in the right way and in the right time then gives you the best chance to be successful. And, by the way, if his offense suffers a point or two per game because he's expending a little bit more energy on defense, I don't have a problem with that, because, again, that's all part of the component of winning a championship. And I think Luka, by the way, has looked better on that end of the floor this year. And I thought we saw some improvement in him last year, and I think we've seen some improvement this year relative to last year. So nothing other than, as I said, the 3-point percentage is happening in his game that I look at that's, anything that isn't a positive for the Mavs. He's still producing at a high level, but the numbers have taken, the decrease that you would hope would be proportionate to the involvement of other people that makes it, more of a team game that's more ultimately conducive to higher level success eventually.
Yeah, it's
interesting. You buy that?
Yeah, his assist percentage is a little up. The one thing that I do think has been down a little bit, that I think is conditioning a little bit, and is maybe just some other problems. His 2-point percentage is down too, and he a couple years ago was like top 10 in the NBA. He was like up there with Giannis and Anthony Davis and like big centers that were shooting well inside the paint, especially just inside like the restricted area.
Yeah,
he's missed some bunnies recently where you're like, man, like he feel like he would make that in the past, and so I think there's something going on with his touch there, but the way that he's made up for it is this mid-range, right? Like we talked about Dirk earlier, and he's made that Dirk shot over and over again, to the point where Hubie Brown called it that Luka's patented shot. And I was like, hold on, wait, didn't we just see a guy do this for like decades before? But yeah, he's taking it to that degree where he's hitting those mid-range shots, and he's killing it. That's how he killed the Grizzlies the other night. All those shots weren't just like at the rim.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Dirk said this, and I think that because I listened to what Dirk had to say over the years, that and I certainly understand where the league is and the models of efficiency of shoot threes, get inside. I mean, that obviously there's nothing wrong with the fact that the league is trending that way. But Dirk always brought up the fact that late in games, teams are not going to give you wide open threes. They're going to work much harder to take those away from you. They're going to work much harder to take away your ability to get inside. You got to have something else that you can go to. And I think that's why Dirk was such a hard worker and such a believer in that part of your game, that you can score at 3 levels. You don't just want to be a 2-level scorer where it's at the rim or it's from the 3-point line. I know that analytically that's great, but there still is value in being a 3-level scorer. And we're seeing that with Luka this year. And I don't know if that's specifically Dirk's influence rubbing off on him, because Dirk's around more. And I do think that as the years have unfolded, even, they were teammates obviously for a season, but I think even as the years have gone by and now Dirk's more involved with his special advisor role, I do think that there's a growing mentorship that continues there with Dirk and Luka. Maybe some of that is what this is all about, or maybe it's just Luka's just, he's obviously a high IQ guy. And he understands that teams are going to work to take things away from me, so I've got to work on this part of my game. And, we're seeing the fruits of his efforts to do that so far this year, for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely added that to his game over the last couple of years, and it has definitely benefited him. Last question here for you quickly. You're somebody that was there for Dirk's, like a long time in Dirk's run, covering this Mavericks team, being around the team. What was that night like? The jersey retirement, seeing all those guys from the 2011 team there. I stayed even like as late as I possibly could just to watch Dirk go through and like hug every single person afterwards, and then go over and hug Luka. He had a little moment together with Luka. Yeah. And then I will take this to my grave that when they embraced afterwards, no cameras, no nothing, Dirk like pointed up to the rafters and looked at Luka, and I was like, ooh, it's like making a spot for him up there and hoping that Luka takes the mantle from him. But what was that night like for you? Is there anything that stood out to you that people aren't even talking about, or that you thought was memorable or special?
Well, it was great to see the championship guys, and loved, having them on our telecast that night. We had Karan and we had Peja, and JJ and Trix were on the pre-game show on Valley Sports as well. So having, hearing all of their stories and their memories was great. But what I loved about it, and I've said this before and I will say it again, this is what I loved about the night more than anything. I think some people looked at the night, and I got a lot of tweets about, man, my sports tears are going to be flowing tonight and everything. And it was emotional to see, because I thought, like, when he talked about his mom and dad, especially since his mom wasn't here at the end of his career, I thought when he talked about his mom and dad, man, that would be the thing that would get Dirk. And, he used enough humor through other parts of the speech to kind of get him through that. And then the emotional part was when he started talking about the fans. And, I've said this before, and I want to reiterate that Dirk and Dallas is an amazing story. And it's the best story that we've ever had in sports here. I really, really believe that. And I'm not naive enough to say it's the biggest story because, of course, hey, look, there's a reason we're recording this podcast earlier in the day on Sunday. I mean, we all want to watch the Cowboys later today. We all get what the biggest story in town is. But
we not them boys.
Yeah. but Dirk is the best story because it's a guy who came here who seems so out of place. And by his own admission, I mean, how many times has he called himself the skinny, shy 19-year-old from Würzburg, Germany, who came here, and everybody in Dallas wrapped their arms around him. And even though the first year was rough and the morning news ran the Paul Pierce comparisons after every game that first year, do you know they did that? Sometimes I take it for granted.
I wasn't here then. But
yeah, okay. So sometimes I take for granted. This is going to be a long answer. I'm sorry. Stream of consciousness coming here. I take for granted the fact people don't realize that happened here. So Dirk was taken 9th in 1998. Paul Pierce was taken 10th. Then the lockout happened and the season didn't start until February of 1999. So that entire year, and I get it, but the morning news started running these comparisons game to game of what Dirk did and what Paul Pierce did, because it's like, oh my gosh,
game
the Mavs
to game,
passed.
like every game.
Yes, that was happening.
That's just weird content in general. Like, that'd be like if we would do Desmond Bain, Josh Green right now, right? Like if we just kept running those every day.
Yeah. So this was happening for a lot of the season, that they were running these like game, last night Paul Pierce had 27 and Dirk had 7, and here's what here's what Pierce is doing and here's what Dirk is doing. So yeah, that happened for a bunch of the year, his rookie season. And so there were some rough patches, but the fans stood by him. And then we saw Dirk, just grow into this, obviously historically great player. But, we don't watch games, Nick. We don't cover games. We cover people playing games. Yeah, and so the person that Dirk is, just how it all unfolded of this improbable rise to NBA icon status, global basketball icon status. And it all happened here. And there was such a warm and fuzzy mutual admiration society between the Maverick fans and Dirk and their appreciation for them, that I thought that, that just has made it the best story that I think's ever happened in Dallas-Fort Worth sports. So what I recall and what I think about with that night was flashing back to Dirk retired in 2019. He then did exactly what he said he was going to do and what he needed to do, which is, I want to travel while the kids are still young and aren't in school.
Yeah, right.
And I need a break from basketball. So he wasn't around very much. And then I think, and I've never heard Dirk address this specifically, but I do believe in my heart of hearts that I think Dirk understood that, look, it was going to be really hard for this franchise after Dirk was such an overwhelming presence for 21 seasons, for the franchise to start carving out its new path. And so I think Dirk stayed away so he didn't cast his looming shadow over everything.
Yeah,
so I never heard him say that. But look, we know Dirk, and I think we understand who he is and what he's all about. So all of the things I said earlier were true. Yes, he said he needed a break because basketball was everything for 21 years. Yeah, he wanted to go travel and go live his best life. But I also think that Dirk recognized it's in the best interest for the Mavericks if I'm not there all the time initially. And then COVID hit. March 11th, 2020 comes around, and then everybody is not around at that point. So right. Dirk was to me a little surprisingly kind of off the radar, basically from the end of his career. And then obviously more established with the organization with getting into this special advisor role that he's had. And we had him on the broadcast. But for me, the great thing about the night was Dirk was back and we all got to see him and we all got to hear from him and we all got to have another long kiss goodnight. That was the cool part of the night to me. It wasn't that, it's great that 41 goes up there and that's forever. And that cements his legacy as the greatest Maverick. And, we all love that. But just seeing him, hearing from him and seeing the undying, everlasting love that's going to exist between everybody who's a Mavs fan and Dirk and that reciprocity between the two parties involved. That to me is so cool, man. And that's what the whole night was about, was to get to see that love affair sort of rekindled for a night and everybody to put their arms around each other again. I don't mean to I feel like I'm writing a romance novel with some of the terminology.
Hey, that's what it was. It's the greatest story, right? You can't help but wax poetic about a guy like Dirk from what he means to this. I said after that night, I don't know if there's a single player, save maybe Michael Jordan, that means as much to one franchise as Dirk does. And I would argue that Michael Jordan even does more, or that Dirk does even more because of the history the Mavs had before and after and all that.
Sure. No, it was a great night. And that, to me, that's what, there were a lot of wonderful things. I did say the one underrated part of the night was Jason Kidd's comedic timing. Because
give him a 10-day.
Yeah. And he did a nice job of just I'm not like a comedian guy, but we all understand that there is comedic timing in terms of how you deliver jokes and lines. Right. And he did a good job with that, of his cadence with it, and then turning and looking at him and this goofy look on his face and sitting there in silence and everybody laughing. So the underrated part of the night, the thing that nobody's talking about, is Jason Kidd has underrated comedic timing, I think. So
not a doctor, not a comedian. He'll just all year he'll just bring up different professions he's not. You mentioned Dirk on the broadcast. Again, I lied. Last question now. You mentioned Dirk on the broadcast. It was that game before that Jersey night game. I think it was that Nuggets game, right? Where he joined you on the broadcast. I thought he was really, really good. Right?
December 21st against Minnesota. That was the game that we had him on. So it was several games.
It was weeks before that time. Time is a construct.
So, and to clarify, you are right. He was on the pregame show. So he was on Mavs Live with Dana and Devin and Brian Damaris on January the 3rd. But he was with me and Skin when Harp was out for a period of time. He was with me and Skin for the full game as an analyst, as a guest analyst on December 21st against Minnesota.
My brain just blocked out all of that time, I guess. That was when the Mavs were losing, so I was just blocked it out. I thought he was so good on the broadcast, him being one of the first times he's been on. And obviously, you have you have all these clips, right, with him and showing his broadcast skills. But are we going to see more of that? Is Dirk going to come back a couple times and be fill in, or is that just a one-time Harp is out because of COVID and that situation? Or
we have an open door policy when it comes to Dirk on the broadcast, so he can be back anytime he wants to, and I do think that that's going to happen periodically in the future. It's not going to happen 15 times a year or anything like that. Yeah. But I certainly think a few times a season that Dirk's going to. I certainly hope so, and I think he wants to do it. That was the vibe I got from that particular night, that he wants to do that. And man, he was so good. And it was so fun having him on the Zoom production call, and him telling his crazy Dirk stories and
the Towns thing. That was it was Minnesota. You're completely right.
Yeah.
The Towns thing, where Towns had said, "I'm the greatest big man shooter in the history of the game," and Dirk was like, "Oh, the greatest big man shooter
he's got it rolling,
makes a three." It was amazing.
Yeah. So the great thing, the amazing thing about that night was just sitting there, and 2 minutes into the game, dude, just sitting there realizing, whoa, Dirk's just going stream of consciousness right now.
Yeah, right.
And sitting here listening to how much he's seeing about the game and trying to verbalize in real time. And this is Romo-esque, kind of he's seeing this, he's seeing that, and he's saying it all at once. And it's Followell, stay the hell out of the way for a few minutes and let this dude roll. So it was really, really interesting to see. Dirk obviously is an extremely knowledgeable player about the game. Right. And then to hear him say all of it, because we never watched a game with him before, obviously. He's out there playing.
Yeah, he was playing.
We don't have that experience. And so to sit there next to him watching a game and seeing everything that he was saying in real time about this needs to happen and they're doing this, and it's holy cow, man. This is some incredible stuff. So I thought he did a great job, and would love to have him, because he's got funny stories to tell. But we saw a level of basketball insight unfolding in real time that night that we've never really kind of had the chance to hear from Dirk before. Because obviously he's always talking about the game as a past occurrence, or talking about the game as a future occurrence, not there in real time. So that was super cool, man. Loved it.
I also mentioned Romo after that game and said that the way he called fouls, he called what the foul was, right? Almost as soon as it happened. And I thought that was where he was Romo, because he can't really call plays before, right? He can't be oh, pick and roll left side. He can't really do that. But Yeah, calling the fouls I thought was great. Mark Followill, thank you for the extra time.
Yeah, man.
It's funny to plug your work is like watch a Mavs game. Like
there you go.
Watch a Mavs game on Valley Sports. Anything else you want to plug? Podcast? Anything else? Radio show?
Well, Brian and I do a podcast. Take that with you. It's a subscriber podcast on Patreon. Yeah, Dirk named our podcast so many years ago, man. But speaking of plugging work, I would just like to say that you and Isaac, I'm sorry, and I know Isaac isn't with us today, but you guys do a wonderful job. This is a go-to podcast if you're a Mavs fan. I love your guys' insight and the professionalism in terms of your setup that you've got here. I mean, you got this awesome intro. It's like, oh man, this is like the work that you guys have done to make this just a venture that is worthy of the Mavericks and worthy of fans getting up-to-date information and good takes and, coming and just talking Mavs and having fun and getting insight, man. You guys do a wonderful job. And I mean that with the utmost sincerity, man. Great job. And so if there's any work I want to plug your work because you and Isaac are doing a fantastic job. And, it was great to be on with you. I was honored to be invited on as a guest. And feel free to have me on, give me the Dirk open door policy. I can come on whenever I want.
We will.
So, all right.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time and appreciate it. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.